Are intra and inter-domain relationships distinct from isomorphism?
It is and it isn't. There's one of the things that gets a little tricky when thinking about axiom two is that when we're talking about isomorphism, we're usually talking about isomorphos, which means one structure or one pattern. So in one sense, axiom two is a pattern that is held in many places. But in another sense, we're not really talking about the structure of things. We're talking more about the process of things when thinking about axiom two. So in that sense, it's not just a conceptual concept. So in other words, the tricky thing that happens is that when we look at, say, axiom three and axiom one, this distinct, inseparable, non-interchangeable, and then we go to this axiom one of the immanent is more fundamental than the omniscient and transcendent, or that relationship is more fundamental than identity. Both of those concepts, three and one, can be held, or both of those patterns, axiom three and axiom one, can be held as just theoretical constructs, right? They can be talked about as shapes. But when I get to thinking about process, I'm no longer dealing purely within the realm of theory. I'm no longer thinking about concepts as abstractions, so much as I'm talking about embodied realities. So in effect, this is part of the reason why axiom two is particularly tricky to work with, because in order to describe it, I have to use language. And language normally points to some object, some sort of pattern, something that we can perceive, right? But axiom two is actually talking about the process of perception, not the perceiver and not the perceived, but the process of perception. So then the question becomes, where exactly does that get described from? If I try to describe it from the point of view as some sort of outside perspective, then I end up with this phenomena of turtles all the way up and turtles all the way down. But that's a projection of the way in which I'm considering the process, rather than the nature of the process itself. So every process is, in fact, a ring, but it's a ring that is both within and across the nature of domain. This is why it's very tricky to imagine. And it's partly the reason why I wanted to refer to that particular essay, because the way in which that essay works is that it looks at the dynamic of imagination itself as a way of considering the notion of the process both of imagination and the processes that are revealed when we actually do the imaginative action.